Deere 1 Series tractor. With its durable construction and features that hook up to dozens of attachments with ease, no job is too tough. The Frells family runs with us because this is more than just land, it's home. Nothing runs like a Deere. Get a 1 Series tractor for just $99 per month at your John Deere dealer today. For additional cost information, please call toll-free 855-633-2315.
Michael Devine, the Doctor of Truth.
Does anyone have anything they'd like to confess?
At AM 1400 KVFD.
We're going to find out something now, by God, because Dr. Lee Heib is on the air with us. How are you, Doctor? Hello? Hello? No, you're not on air with us. Huh. What's going on here? She was, well, here, I can get her back. No, I didn't. She's texted me. Do we have issues? I'm gonna say no. Please call back. So, there. Okay, let's try that. Maybe Dr. Heib will be with us now, but Dr. Lieb is a libertarian, of course, and an orthopedic surgeon. Is that you, Lee? Hello, Lee.
No, but this is a correction. The Freedom Rock is not tomorrow. It's Saturday at 10 in the morning.
Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we got to get Lee Heib on here. I appreciate that. I was going to make that correction. Yeah, so I got another text from Lee saying the line was busy with that correction call. I may need more lines in here than just one. Okay, let's go. Dr. Heib, is that you?
Yeah, finally.
Yes, finally.
Ignoring me.
No, I wasn't, darling. I was not ignoring you at all. It's just that we had a couple of weird things happen there, and then we have a Freedom Rock here in Webster County. I suppose most counties in Iowa do, and I have been talking about the dedication being tomorrow, and actually it's Saturday. So someone called in to correct me, which is necessary. I need correction every now and then.
That's good. I was just going to bring that point up, but I'm glad you did
it. Dr. Lee Heib is a libertarian, and she works out of the Council Bluffs, Omaha area. She's an orthopedic surgeon, a real doctor, in other words, not some sociologist who I really wonder in academia how they ever decided that a PhD could be awarded in sociology. I just don't get that. It's the most inexact of our sciences. They want to tell us this is hard science, and it simply is not. I'm at war with sociology, Dr. Heib.
Well, but let me just tell you, I was just rereading this article because I think every once in a while, about once a year, I reread it. And it's Michael Crichton. And, Michael Crichton, everybody thinks he's an author, wrote Jurassic Park, which he was. But he was also a physician and a brilliant guy.
Yeah.
And he actually has, everybody should read, if they want to understand kind of what's the problem with science today, and a lot of this stuff with COVID, where people are buying into false papers and papers that have literally been falsified, or just nonsense. Some of the global warming nonsense. He has a really, really good paper, and it's basically not a paper. It's a lecture he gave at Caltech, and you can Google it or DuckDuckGo it or whatever and look it up for Michael Crichton lecture at Caltech, and it really just nails it. And he uses, it's interesting because he uses, this guy is, the reason I bring that up is it's not just the sociologists, it's even people in the hard sciences can be victim of this. And so there's a famous formula for, it's called, when we looked at the SETI project, so the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Well, the guy, Dr. Drake, and I think his first name was Frederick, but I'm blanking on his name, maybe it's Frank Drake, but he came up with this formula to look at the probabilities of somebody being out there. And he has all these nice little components of the formula, like the number of stars, the galaxy, the number of planets, times the number of planets that can support life, times the percentage of planets that might have been around long enough to have intelligent life, times blah, 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 blah. And you go through all these, it looks like this really complex formula. But as Michael Crichton points out, not one component of that equation can be verified. And therefore it's meaningless. It just looks like science, but it's meaningless. And I really think we're in that era where a lot of that is happening, it's like the models for global warming, and they claim to be able to predict what the world is going to be in 100 years. And in this talk, he mentions the fact, he said, look, in 1900, if you had asked people in New York City what their big, I think we live there, if you asked them in New York City what their big concern about for transportation was going to be, what would they have said? Or they would have said, well, the city's growing, we're going to need more horses. And then if there are more horses, there's going to be more horse poop. And there's going to be a problem with getting rid of all this. You know what I'm saying? Nobody in 1900 had even thought about nuclear energy, the gasoline-powered cars, all the different things we take for granted today. In fact, if you think of all the things that just didn't exist, cell phones, commuting from home, working from home, that kind of thing, it just didn't exist. So the thought, you couldn't predict from 1900 to 2000. What makes these guys in global warming science think that we can predict what's going to happen what's going to be the truth in 2100? Well, and I got to say, there's a lot of that going around, and I'm really kind of disgusted with a bunch of the stuff in COVID. But it's every time I turn around, there's something like this happening. So I know it's off the subject of what we were going to talk about, maybe, but that's kind of what came up today, because it's not just the sociologists. In fact, sometimes they can talk about things which they might be right about, but there's a lot of stuff going around in medicine right now that's just no data, just a lot of thinking, just a lot of ideas. Like, if you put a mask on, there's no real data that it makes a difference. They're trying to create false data, but there's no data it makes a difference in controlling the spread of small viruses. The only thing that makes a difference that has been absolutely shown, in my opinion, and it's been shown in a fabulous landmark paper, is absolute humidity. Absolute humidity can predict the next outbreak. And that you can't do with masks. That you can't do with anything else, because we can't control these small viruses with other things. But nature does it through humidity. It drops these viruses out, and it just doesn't transmit. So there you go. What did you want to talk about?
Well, we're going to get right into the California fires here. But before we leave Michael Crichton, Dr. Crichton went to war with climate scientists back in the mid-2000s, or around 2005, a couple of years before he died. He wrote a book called State Fair, it looks like. And in it, he attacked some of the climate warriors. With the predictable results, they all went crazy because they were refuting science and blah, 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 and all this other
stuff. And this is the lecture that he gave at Caltech, is basically calling them out, and he's pointing out that it's just a bunch of bunkum like this was. But he goes through point by point, and his talk is Aliens Cause Global Warming.
There we go.
The name of his talk.
There we go.
He was a great guy. God, what a loss there. He died of, I guess he died of throat cancer, which I didn't know, but
yeah, I called him up here, but I can't really see what he passed away. He died relatively young. I mean, to you and I, he died when he was 66 years old.
Right, and he died of throat cancer. I don't know if he was a smoker. I don't know what his story was, but I'm kind of surprised that he went. It was a fairly quick thing. So
what was the name of his speech again? At Cal Poly, did you say?
Caltech. So
Caltech.
If you just Google, and it's really an excellent speech. He just nails it. And he's got a bunch of these. In fact, if you look at Wikipedia on Michael Crichton, and I haven't done the rest of his speeches, I just happen to be, that was cited in another scientific paper that I read, and I pulled it up and I printed it, and I keep it handy for any time I feel a little blue. I just want to read something. I read his paper. I mean, it sounds kind of crazy, but it's just so excellent about clear thinking. And if you need to get your head straight about clear thinking about science, there's nothing better than reading Michael Crichton stuff. And so he's got other talks out there, which I'm going to go back now and look at. But yeah, he was wonderful. And what a loss.
Well, we've been seeing a lot of fires, of course, burning uncontrollably in California. And of course, it's all Trump's fault. That should be noted, first of all.
Even if it's arson, that's the thing. Even if it's arson, and they're catching. I don't know if you saw that, but I got sent a little thing, and it had like 12 or 16 photos. Arsonist. All these people being. And there were the other day, this woman. I think it was a woman that was holding an arsonist at bay. She had a weapon, and she just had him face down on the ground. I mean, the problem is the newspapers never report that these are from arson. You know, this whole stuff in Australia last summer, it was overwhelmingly from arson. They're trying to portray this as global warming, but it's arson. And they're sending people out to do this. And yes, it's mismanagement of the forest. And Trump is exactly right about that. They've mismanaged the forest. They set us up for this. I mean, you know, anybody knows you can't leave all the dead brush in there forever. It's going to burn. And when something starts, then there's no check rein on the whole thing. And what they used to do to prevent bad forest fires in these heavily forested areas, they would clear cut an area and give it a break, fire breaks and all that kind of thing. And they quit doing it. And now they wonder why people's houses are burning. I mean, there's some tragic stories this week of people dying in these fires. But a bunch of them are being set by arsonists.
Yeah, they are.
And I got to remember, and my great uncle, my uncle, he pioneered skiing in northern Michigan. He bought up a mountain on back taxes after World War II. He did, and he lived in the forest, and he was a smoker, and he got tired of them always blaming. You know, this is the era of Smokey the Bear, and he's always only you can prevent forest fires. And he said, look, try to light here. When I was a kid, he gave me a cigarette. And he said, try to light it. Just try to turn this into a forest fire. And I couldn't do it. Now, I'm not saying that's a scientific study, but his point was they're not telling you what's really causing these forest fires. And it's not people dropping cigarettes by and large. That's not what it is. Yes, it can be campfires, it can be other things, but a cigarette by itself won't start these things easily. And so there's a lot of myth and a lot of good thinking about things that just aren't true. But the media is complacent here by not promoting the facts on these arsonists. I think that's a huge issue, and you got to ask yourself why. Why are we not talking about this? And you know, the other thing that's interesting, which again, it's a little hard for me to wrap my head around what's going on here, but when you look at some of these fires, you see cars upside down. You see stretches where houses were burned but no trees. And it's a little odd. Or it specifically targeted a neighborhood and spared everything around it. It's not like, this isn't like, there's something else going on here. I mean, I just don't know that I get it all, but I'm just saying one of the things I don't believe is that this is global warming. This is not global warming doing this. Hard to believe looking at today that this is global warming. We didn't, you know, it's not causing fires everywhere. It's specific areas.
Just specific areas. Yeah, I had to smile today when I turned on YouTube, and I usually spend a few minutes every morning checking out YouTube excerpts for, I might run them during my show, for example, here on KBFD. But this morning I found a woman who was living in a forest, and the forest was already on fire. But she discovered an arsonist near her property who was trying to set fire to the woods around her home. She had a .45 pistol, it looked like to me. And
that was the one I saw the picture of then.
Yeah, that was it. That was it.
Wow.
Here's a forest on
lived there.
Yeah, here's a forest on fire, and this little creep is out there trying to increase the fire. What is going on there?
Where they started to begin with. That's really the issue. And I have to say, again, there's people want to laugh at conspiracy theorists, but then if you're not a conspiracy theorist, you have to be a coincidence theorist. You have to believe that all these forest fires are now coincidental. All these arsonists are lone rangers, that they're acting alone. They're not being put out there by any organization. They happen to hit at the same time that we've got riots in the street, a virus, what else? All this stuff is happening all at once. Do you think this is all coincidence? I'm just saying, I don't think so. And then when you find out, I thought that this was good. You find out the funding, that many of these are rent-a-mobs, these rioters. Yeah, and we're finding funding going back to the Open Society and all these different organizations. Well, one of the problems is for the people that were picked up in these riots and they were put in jail, they would be bailed out en masse So you rent a group to do this, and this is pertinent to arson too. I think you rent a group to do something, but they know they're part of an organization. They're just doing a job. They're just getting paid. You know, they don't have the moral scruples to not do these bad things, but they're just willing to go break stuff up and burn things because they're getting paid, knowing they're going to get bailed out. But in Lancaster, Pennsylvania, they just put $1 million ahead on their bail, and those guys are sitting in jail and the riot stopped. Amazing thing there.
What an amazing thing.
And that's what we're going to have to do. I don't know what's happening to these arsonists. I don't know if they're getting bailed out, but if so, we have to stop it.
Well,
how much is this costing us in life and people and money that we as the taxpayers and honest citizens that are not doing all these things are paying? I read somewhere that this is one of the most destructive periods of time to personal property ever in America. All these
it is. Yeah, it is.
It's a huge, and it's. I don't think it's coincidence. That's the point I'm making, is that, people can make fun of conspiracy theories, but it's about time to look at means, motive, and opportunity, and who's doing all this, and what's really going on in our country.
Well,
because
it's important to note also that these are not young student intellectuals that led the protests in the 1960s and 70s. These are just a bunch of thugs. These guys are fast food workers or unemployed people or just bums in general who come from all over the country to like Portland or wherever there's trouble and throw rocks. Now, who's providing them with the transportation across the country?
Right, and the hotels.
Yeah.
They found out in San Francisco, for example, the rioters there were being paid enough that they could stay at the Hilton or the Francis Drake or whatever the hotel was, and they would just crapify the hotel. I mean, the hotels were just being completely deluged with junk and people doing horrendous things in the room. They didn't care. It was a cash deal. There's a bunch of rooms bought up for these people. So yeah, somebody's behind it. And I think people need to wake up and realize we're under attack. Our nation is under attack.
Yes, it is.
It's not a single pronged thing. This virus was just one of the prongs. The other prongs are the so-called systemic racism that's taking over and allowing people to do mayhem to solve a problem that they're not going to solve with mayhem. Even if you believe there's systemic racism, you're not going to solve it by going into black neighborhoods and torching them and burning them and ruining black-owned businesses, which is what's happening.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that's the saddest part about this whole thing, in my opinion. Plus the dead people. I mean, I don't know if you saw that tragic story about. My husband was reading to me the other day about the man that went to get a vehicle to evacuate his family, leaving his mother-in-law, his wife, and his son back in the area, but the fire hadn't swept over him at that point. But while he was gone, the fire swept over him. The mother told the son to run with the dog. She ended up having to abandon her mother, who was elderly, couldn't carry her. And when he came back to evacuate them, he sees some woman sees some body kind of lying burned in the street, picks her up, puts her in the car, and says, "I'm sorry, but I have to go after my family." And she looks at him and says, all she could croak out was, "I'm your wife." And everybody else.
Oh, God.
It's a horrible story. But the people that are doing this don't realize these are people. These are our fellow citizens that are dying. And it's not by accident. It's not due to random wildfires. And it's about time we call this the way it is and stop this, because it's one tragedy after another.
Oh, I think they know what they're doing. I think they are using cruelty. I think they are using fear. Terrorism, frankly, is what this is. It's domestic terrorism. And I think there are people who we would recognize as being powerful political figures and financial figures who are behind it. And they want as much terror, and that includes death on occasion, as they can bring forward, all with the goal of getting Donald Trump out of the White House, for God's sake. It's shocking. This is a coup d'etat that's happening.
Or a flu d'etat.
Flu d'etat. Oh, you're getting cute today. I'll tell you. You're getting cute today. I'll tell you.
I wish I could take credit for that. It was a guy in the American Thinker, and I saw that, and I said, "Oh, that's the funniest thing I've heard." Flu d'etat.
Flu d'etat. There we go. All right. Now
Yeah,
we're talking.
it's very sad.
It is
well,
very sad.
And on a moral note, I listened to a lecture this guy was talking about moral culpability. And he said, it's easy to say that the guys funding all this are morally culpable. But honestly, the guy in the street that does this to his fellow man is the ultimate culpable agent. And people who are signing on to do this mayhem, they need to be held accountable. Don't say they're just innocent dupes. They're not innocent dupes. Just like, it's like in 1932 in Germany. I'm sorry, if you're going to round up your fellow man and take him to the death camp, you, with your job that you're saying you're just doing your job, that is not acceptable. And at some point, these guys are lighting fires, whatever they're doing, it's not acceptable. And falsifying papers, whatever it is, like, we think of it as kind of a funny thing that some sex workers are now the agents of writing of being a surrogate for creating false data for this pandemic. But it's not funny. That actually is the truth. It's the Surgisphere was supposed to be the big data gathering business that had the world's data on hydroxychloroquine. And when they drilled it down, it was a couple sex workers, a science fiction writer and a sex worker that were actually the only people working there. And it was a complete fraud. But they're culpable because they're contributing to false data that people don't get treated with hydroxychloroquine and die. Don't think they're innocent. They could be funny, but they're not innocent. And people engaging in this are not innocent. And I think at some point we have to stop this locally. Everybody that's involved. So I'm glad Fort Dodge is not under attack. I don't think neither am I. I'm
not yet.
Not
yet.
No.
Dr. Lee,
hitting Omaha though.
It's going to happen in Omaha, you think?
It is hitting Omaha. They're worried about a case that's happening here, and they've basically told the old market essentially like shutting down because they're worried about riots down there. And we've had highways blockaded, and yeah, it's coming.
All right, yeah. Dr. Lee Heeb, thank you for being on.
Thanks.
Yeah, this is AM 1400 KVFD, the voice of Fort Dodge.
I'm Walter Minga. I live in rural Iowa. I'm a Republican. I've been one for most of my adult life. I even voted for Joni Ernst, but I just can't do it in clear conscience again. She went to Washington and it changed her. So instead of castrating the pigs, she became a sheep. She didn't shake up anything. This time, I'm excited to vote for Teresa Greenfield. She's different. She'll stand up to her own party. She will work with both Democrats and Republicans to get our economy back on track.